Hey everybody, it's Dr. Tyler and welcome back. We have another video for you today in regards to 3D printing. So we're actually standing in our new orthodontic lab here at the office. This is something we opened just within the last year. We outgrew our former lab space because we started using a lot of the 3D printing in the office. So 3D printing has been around for probably about 15 years or so. However, in dentistry, it's really come into its own, particularly in orthodontics, maybe the last 5-6 years, and we've been using it for the last 5-6 years to help us out in the office. So it's allowed us to do things we really would not be able to have done before, primarily in the terms of aligners, being able to make a series of aligners for patients completely, entirely inside the office, as well as being able to offer patients models of their teeth that they're able to use for retainers, basically allowing for mass production of models of patients' teeth without incurring a lot of cost, as well as being able to maintain those models so that they don't break like traditional plaster models. So for 3D printing in dentistry, there's basically two different types of 3D printers that you can use. One is called a DLP printer and one is called an SLA printer. So respectively, they stand for digital light projector and SLA stands for stereolithography. They work in very much the same manner. The primary difference really has to do with the light source that they're using to actually cure the resin. So a digital light projector is using a little projector, whereas an SLA printer is actually using a laser to cure the resin in different stages. But for all intents and purposes, they actually work pretty much the same way. So you have a pool of uncured resin, very similar to dental resins that we use for bonding and composites and things like that. And it's sitting in a pool where a light source goes across it and cures it in small little layers, and it actually builds from the top down. So these actually build on the underside of the platform. If you look at the DLP printers like this, they actually build on the underside of the platform, whereas in the SLA printers, they build on the top side of the platform. That's one way to tell them apart as well. But again, they work very similarly, and they provide us with two things, most importantly. Number one is speed, and the other is accuracy, both of which we need for dentistry. So the biggest thing that these 3D printers have done for us here at AOS is it's allowed us to do things we really would not have been able to do before. The biggest one that we've been doing more recently is making in-house aligners. So with that, we actually use a software called SureSmile. We're able to generate a series of models, or those STL files that I was talking about earlier, and being able to print those allows us to make the entire process of making an aligner that you typically have to send off to another company for. We can do it entirely in the office. The biggest thing that does for our patients, number one, it allows us more control over the case, which we always would prefer. Being orthodontists, we are a little bit OCD about that kind of thing. Number two, it's allowed us to cut the cost down considerably as well. So without having to pay lab fees when these models are being sent out to any other companies, we can keep the lab's costs down on our end, and that's allowed us to pass that on to the patient. So it's made more simple cases, in particular, be a little bit more affordable for our patients as well. So after the models have finished printing, they pull up on this platform like this. So this just finished here, and you can see how these models are situated on the platform there. Now they're not ready to use right away, so being resin, they're still covered in kind of a thin layer of resin, so they have to be washed and then cured after that. But ultimately the goal is to generate a model that looks something like this. This can be done, and you can use this model for anything. The best thing about resin printers is that unlike plaster, which is our traditional method of making models of teeth, whatever you do to this model, it's not going to break. So if you make a retainer on this model, the model's not going to break after you make the retainer, unlike the plaster model. So you can make as many retainers as you want off this model. So what we've been doing is we've been giving patients the set of their final models to take home with them. That way, if their retainer ever breaks, all they have to do is bring their model back into us. We can make another retainer, sometimes as quick as why they wait. So this model right here is able to be made with aligners. You can actually take this over to our retainer making machine, and we can make a series of plastic retainers off this model. So from scan to print, how does this all work? Well, as the name implies, it starts with the scan. So the first thing that we need to do is generate that STL file from the patient. So we're using intraoral scanners, using that camera to actually capture a 3D model of the teeth. Now from there, that STL file, which is again just basically a model of those teeth that's kind of stored in the cloud, is then uploaded into our treatment software. So for example, if we're making aligners, we're going to upload that scan into our software. It's called SureSmile. And then we're actually able to manipulate that model on the computer to generate aligners, okay? And then from there, we export that back to the printers. It goes onto the printer platform software. Those are oriented and then sent to the printer so that they're able to be printed. And then from there, we generate those 3D printed models, a series of them, and use those models to make a series of the retainers. And though it sounds complex and that there are a lot of different steps, really the model has not left our office. That's the biggest benefit for us in these 3D printing, is that we have total control of the process from start to finish.